Yes. He immigrated to the United States in 1994, where he got his Bachelor of Music in Voice Performance from DePaul University and Master of Music in Musicology from Northwestern University. Throughout this time he also studied chazonas with such well-known cantors of cantorial art as Chazan Shlomo Schuster, Chazan Henry Rosenblum and Chazan Alberta Mizrahi. In 2006 he was certified as a cantor through Hebrew Union College, and in 2015 he completed his certification as a conservative cantor and became a fully fledged member of the Cantors Assembly. The bio goes on and on and on, so I'm just going to read the last 20 paragraphs. He's appeared on stage in many places. I won't list them all. His creative work includes liturgical and secular compositions for voice and choir, relevant of course to today's presentation. In 2017 he wrote and produced The Singing Yid, a musical show based on his life and experience in Russia and the United States. He currently serves as cantor of Beth Hillel Beit Emunah, a conservative egalitarian congregation in, is that Wilmette? Wilmette.
Although if you speak Yiddish, it's Wilmette.
Depending on... anyway, it's in Illinois. I do know that's Illinois, not in Hawaii. He's a member of the American Conservative Cantors, Chicago and Milwaukee Association of Synagogue Music, and the Cantors Assembly. He resides in Wilmette with his daughter, Pavel Roytman. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Can you guys hear me? Yeah. Great. Before I begin the presentation, I just want to thank the European Cantors Association, also all of you, for inviting me this year. This is a big honor, and in these very few days I learned a lot, and I hope to learn more, so thank you so much. I also want to narrow down a little bit of a presentation and make a distinction between composition and songwriting. I'm actually going to ask you a question. Can anybody please raise your hand? Tell me what's the difference between composition and songwriting?
I'll take a wild guess. Composition is something that's more complex. You would write a certain amount of instruments, or you consider the arrangement and all this. Whereas songwriting, I understand normally like writing songs, melody, harmony, and send it to whoever wishes to perform it.
Correct. Thank you so much. This is a very good assessment of what the difference is. So I did study composition, but I can say that I would not consider myself a composer. I would consider myself more of the songwriter, just because in my view composition involves much more. And I have things that I've written that could be considered compositions. But I would say that 60 to 70% of what I've written is considered to be songs, prayers, etc. in the realm of songwriting. So it's a very important distinction to make, as you will see in the further presentation. So the presentation is called Writing Music for Services. Why do it and how to make it work? Oder Stimme. So the question is, why is there a need to write/commission new music for services? Right? After all, we have so much music, correct? Why do we need to write or commission music for services? So what we're going to do, we're going to go through some of the points that I made, subjectively, objectively, and then we can, if you guys have any more suggestions, we can open the floor for suggestions. So first of all, there is a demand for more congregational pieces in place of traditional cantorial recitatives. Today's congregants love to sing along, and Chazan is often asked to introduce the settings that are singable or participatory in nature. Actually, throwing back at Svetlana's presentation yesterday, she talked about Yismach Moshe, right? The evolution of Yismach Moshe in that one song from Chazanut to barbershop, I think that was the transition. So not to put a negative on this, but congregations do want to sing along, and Chazan is often asked to introduce. The second, there's a desire to sing along and to introduce settings that are singable and participatory in nature. Raise your hand if you were asked to do something that congregation can join you in. No? Nobody? Okay.
Yeah.
Something where you ask the congregation says to you, I'd like to join in with you. Yeah, many, many times, right? There is a desire to hear and sing contemporary sounding music at services. Now, this may be more unique to the United States. Again, as I said, it's going to be both subjective and objective. What I figured out in my work as a chazan, while many of our traditional tunes are still cherished and loved, the younger generation of Jews seeks music that is aesthetically familiar to them. In the States, it's American pop and folk, because it creates a better connection between the world of the synagogue and the outside world. There's also an influx of what you'd call popular Israeli music, like Yonatan Razel, etc. Some texts do not have existing tunes, right? That's another reason to write something. I don't know how it is for you, but sometimes my rabbi says to me, I would love to do this text and I'd love for the congregation to join in. And I'd say, well, there isn't a tune. And he would say, well, why don't you write a tune? And so we go that route sometimes. Sometimes you take the text that you want to write the music to, right? Not somebody tells you to do it, but you want to do it. And that text does not have an existing tune. Another reason, the music that is currently used does not adequately represent the fullness of one's voice, right? So, whom is the majority of cantorial music written for? What type of voice? Traditional. Tenors, right? High baritones, tenors.
Yeah.
It's difficult if you aren't a high baritone or a tenor, or if your voice is not compatible, right? But you are an individual and you have your own voice and your voice is unique. And so you want to sing something that represents you fully. So maybe Tikanta Shabbat by Ganchuk is not going to work out for you, but maybe you can create your own setting. There's at times a need to express oneself in a unique and personal way. So as I said, we're all individuals, right? And even though, at least in the United States, we shy away from the word performance, right? You see, don't ever use the word performance. Don't ever say that as a chazan you perform on the bima. Well, guess what? We actually all do perform, both cantors and rabbis. When you attend a good performance, it goes into your heart and you know what it is, right? Performance is not a bad word. It's not a swear word, right? And so, performing or praying in a certain way at services gives you a certain amount of spiritual satisfaction as an individual, right? So you also want to enjoy what you do, and then guess what happens if you enjoy what you do? Everybody enjoys it. Exactly. Absolutely. Now, these are just some of the reasons that we are moved to write music for services. Can you think of any other reasons? Why would any of you, write something?
Want to.
Because you want to. That's great. Yeah, I overheard the presentation here. I believe maybe you were saying something about Glantz, who heard the tune somewhere, right?
One went to school and heard people.
Correct. So you may be inspired to write a tune, right? You want to say, oh, I want to do that, right? This is super duper legit, right? That's a good reason. Any other reasons?
To commemorate something.
To commemorate something, right? So, let's say it could be a good thing, right? Somebody's bar mitzvah, somebody's marriage, could be something sad, right?
I can tell that, for example, I composed the Shemut Shamayim for the high holidays because I couldn't stand the thought of Shemut Shamayim at the end of a high holiday service. So it's kind of this liturgical statement or setting a new direction for a known piece.
And I'll go American on you and I'll say, how do you feel about that? How does it make you feel? It makes you feel good, right? Yeah, it makes you feel good. You feel like you're fulfilling that.
I mean, I know I've said 3 synagogues at least from
Actually, I'd love to hear that Shibboleth Shema. Benny.
I look for texts that have not been treated.
Right.
There's no point of doing out things at all, show up. So there are in the prayer books some new material there. Also in the Sim Shalom or Mishkan Tfilah, or even in the Hannover Machzor, the beautiful poem by Zeitlin, Shirat Ahava, which I wrote for my daughter because the name was Shira.
Right.
So you find the text and the reason of why you want to write the song.
Exactly, exactly. And by the way, in a lot of what, in the United States, there's a culture of so-called independent minyanim, when younger people with guitars get together in people's houses, and they actually try to find passages in text that appeal to them, that don't have musical settings, and they put music on those texts. So all of these work. Okay, so let's move on. So yes, there are reasons to compose to commission. We already did that. How to make your composition work, right? So just because you wrote a composition and you feel good about it, it doesn't necessarily work. I don't know about you, but I've had instances where I thought, I'm just going to do this piece of music, and then people would be like, no, right? So there are certain things that you need to consider. One of the most important pieces that I learned as a songwriter, prayer writer, whatever, and as somebody who have had experience writing a musical and I'm still improving on it, the first question anybody asks you when you write something, right? Who is your intended audience? Who are you writing? Whom, right? Whom are you writing for? To, whatever, right? So for example, when you wrote your Shibboleth Shema, who did you write for?
For a certain congregation.
Right? You had that congregation in mind, you sort of imagined, right? So, this is very, very important. Now, most likely, your intended audience is your kahal. But with every kahal, and that's why I included this picture, I was looking for a very long time, with every kahal comes a diversity of opinions and tastes. We all know that, right? In every shul there are traditionalists, innovators, lovers of Musaf, musically educated, opinionated, silly, all of whom need to be at least considered while writing. So ideally, I'm not saying it always happens, but ideally, the new piece should be acceptable to the majority of your congregants. It should also fit in within the style of your service of your community and your personal standing in the community. So you could be a new cantor, right? If you're a new cantor, you probably don't want to be a rebel, right? Or you could be a rebel cantor, right? This is your last year, I don't give a shit, right? I'm just going to write this, right? Or you could be a well-established cantor. So in my community, I feel like I can write pretty much anything, right? Because I know people kind of see me as an established person. But you need to think about that too, because this is where your composition is going to go. Now, after you consider your audience, you need to consider very specific music elements and Jewish elements, right? So, very often, we just kind of, I just want to write the tune. But the reason I was asked to do this particular project, this presentation, is because I learned through my work to do things that work somehow, right? And I'm not even touching the subject of do you want your work to live beyond your shul, right? Like if you write for your shul, what do you need to do in terms of, taking it to other shuls? So first of all, the key, right? So most people sing in the key of? Absolutely not. Most people sing in either the key of C or the key of D, right? C is safer, D is okay, right? So if you present your composition, you go, right? How many people are going to connect, right? But if you do, right? Oh, I can sing along, right? Second one, range, right? Range. Range is super important. Why is range important? Most people are not musicians. So by going too high or too low, you might discourage participation. Let me just focus on the word participation for 1 second. I'm not in the States, so I can talk about this freely as a rebel. So, in the States, the word participation means everybody sings with you all the time. I believe that when you hear a beautiful prayer and you close your eyes and you pray silently, it's also participation, right? So participation could be active, could be passive, but if the range is sky high or whatever, deep low, it's hard for you to, if you're an ordinary regular person, hard to connect. Rhythm, right? This is something I learned from Joey Weissenberg, right? Who came to our shul and we did a Shabbat service and I said, Joey, how about we do this? He says, are you kidding me? And he spent 5 minutes doing this. Right? Why is that? Because, remember how you considered your intended audience? Oh, it went out. This is because of all the high notes. Okay. So, most people will not pick up a complicated rhythm pattern, so it's better to choose simple patterns. Melody. So, there was a famous show on HBO about Rodgers and Hammerstein. And in the show, a young, aspiring musician came to Rodgers and Hammerstein and sang to both of them. And Hammerstein said, you know, very nice, but I really prefer a hummable tune. Okay? So it's very, very important. The tune should be humble, right? Create a hummable tune. Nusach. Important?
Yes. Always.
Anybody thinks Nusach is not important? Anybody wants to be a rebel? Maybe.
Depends if you're talking about the song or when the character is alone. When the cantor is singing by himself, then yes. But there are many songs that are sung in holidays, etc., that are not within the Nusach. But because everyone is singing them together, they still feel like the holiday because they connect. They're all
Right. So this is a whole other lecture about Nusach Tefillah, Sinai, traditional and indigenous tune. I'm not doing it, but you're right. I'm talking about Nusach Tefillah and a classical definition of Nusach Tefillah. Right? In a classical definition of Nusach Tefillah, this is complicated because it depends on your audience. Right, on your shul. If you are in Karlbach Shul in New York, right? If you're at Park Avenue, and I love Ozzy, Ozzy's awesome, right? If you go to my shul and you do something different for Hatzi Kaddish for Tal, you're going to be in trouble, right? So, what happens now? By the way, writing in Nusach, and this is, by the way, one of the reasons we don't have a lot of great compositions in Nusach today, is very difficult. Do you guys know anybody who wants to make a suggestion why writing in Nusach is very difficult?
There are modal scales rather than tonal scales.
Right?
That's the major problem.
The major problem. And it's so somebody who wants to create a good composition using the modality of Nuschot, right, needs to be really well versed in the art of composition, right? So.
Plus, you can have the same modal scale, but there'll be different parts of the scale depending on whether the Nusach is for one particular part of the service or another particular part of the service.
Right, absolutely. What's up?
I think also there's some kind of collision between Nusach and rhythm.
True. And are you talking rhythm of the language, or are you talking about the rhythm of
if
the...
you're like, if you're taking whatever straight beat you want, beat 2, 3, 4, or 5,
Right.
The cadence in a Nusach is something that takes time. It has
Right.
like a spatial, need of its own. So kind of forcing Nusach into a rhythmic box is not impossible, but it's more difficult.
Okay.
But it depends on the poetry you are using.
Yeah.
So if the poetry doesn't fit in your box, then you have a problem. But for me, it has nothing to do with the songs.
But you can do both.
Okay, that's fine. We've all expressed our opinions. That's good. That's good.
Poetry, how do you
Also, there's something else that Musa is intellectually very shallow. Because if you take just the one simple modal scale, and you're going to write something only in the Hannover mode, whether it's the Phrygian or it's the Ukrainian Dorian, however you want to define that scale. You know, I think there's some scholarship, a lot of scholarship about that. It's intellectually very challenging to make that compelling and interesting, especially if there's a composition that's longer. And therefore you have to know how to incorporate other motives
Absolutely correct.
into it. And that becomes intellectually very, very challenging. I don't know how many even well-trained professional musicians are up to the task.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
that's not to degrade anybody or to
No.
It's extremely difficult. Very, very challenging.
Absolutely. And so, just remember, I just wanted to bring back the perspective of what we're doing.
Can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
You can start with Nusa, you can end with Nusa, you can do your composition in between according to whatever the text you want, so you fulfill both ideal things, so that the congregation knows when you start it Kabbalat Shabbat and you
Right.
end with the word Baruch Atah Hashem, whatever
Yep.
it is, and what you do in between, using your imagination, you can compose something. So you have your composition, which could be new or different, they can join in, but you come back to reality, start and end with that, so they know where they are.
Absolutely. Now, I just want to bring back the perspective of what we're talking here about, right? We're not arguing for or against Nusa. What I'm saying is, if you sit down to purposefully write something, these are the things you need to consider, depending on who your audience is. That is all I'm saying. You may be interested in not using Nusa, and that's fine if that suits your purpose. You may be set on, that's the only thing I'm going to do, and that can be your thing, right? But what I'm saying, I'm not arguing for or against Nusa. I'm for Nusa, but you'll be writing the song, not me. Okay. Next techniques. Repetition, echo, call, and response. Always works, right? Freddie Mercury. Hey-oh, 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 right? Very, very easy, right? By the way, these are very ancient techniques, right? Those of you who've done any church work, I have. Hallelujah, 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 right? Hallelujah. That's that, right? It works. Nigun. Something to consider. Make a nigun, or niggin, a part of your composition. Why?
Teaches them the melody. They learn it.
Yeah, what else? Remember, America, equality, justice. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Right? So it's super important when somebody walks into your table and says, I'm sorry, I don't speak any Hebrew. Can you speak Yadadai or Yoboboy? Yeah, you can. Good. Nigun. Text. Text is the foundation of the prayer. It is important for your tune to reflect the words according to the flow of the Hebrew language in Hebrew. Personally, I'm not in favor of melody subjugating the text. Okay? So, what is it that we do? So very often we choose the melodies, the example escapes me right now, where we sort of change the words to fit in the melody. Yeah. I don't think it's a good practice in writing the music. If you're making fun, like you're doing, yeah, fine. But if you're writing something, be considerate of the text. Before and after. This is super, super important. This is what I mean by before and after. Jewish prayer does not exist in a vacuum in the Siddur, right? There's stuff that comes before, and then there's stuff that comes after. And those of you who are well steeped in Nusa know that our prayers are set up in a certain way. Our Chatzi Kaddish often introduces or concludes a portion of a prayer, right? We go to Shochena, that introduces one kind of nusach. We go to Na'el Asher Shabbat B'Kol, right? So think when you compose what comes before and what comes after. Presentation, teaching. How do you teach to your congregation, right? Introduce the tune ahead of time. How do you do that?
You start them with something, you let them repeat it, and then wait till they join in.
That's one idea. Another idea is record yourself and send it via email.
Or on WhatsApp.
Very easy, right? You send it and you say, Shalom Chaverim, today we're going to learn this tune for Shabbat. We're going to call it Lichun Ranana, and this is the tune. I hope all of you come this Shabbat. You get them to come. That's to reflect on when you come to Shul.
On a Mavorkin Chodesh, then you introduce what is the month that is coming or the holiday.
Correct. That's
coming,
another
and you
way.
do it
That's
that way.
another way. You can introduce it before services, during services, before Musaf. I like to do what's called sermon and song. When I use the sermon time, when I'm graciously given that time by my gracious rabbi, to say, okay, you know, let's talk about the piece that we're going to all sing together.
What's your take on minor and major? Because when the importance of with the text, you know, people used to use minor when it's sad or they do something, but then fetch and kvitch when it's something happy, like Hallel or something like that, when you're talking about something. Why use a minor when you should be using a major?
Sure. Be complimentary, okay? Very often we cantors are emotional creatures, right? And we all do these things. Right? Don't do that when you teach a piece of music. Right? You go, yai dai 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 dai. Don't do that, right? Do this. Great! Wonderful. Let's do it again, right? You say, of course, it's not always a given. Go slowly. Remember, you're the musician, they're not. Most of the time, right? Use your hands. Hands are great. Any Italians in the audience? Right? So I sing, you sing. This is really good. Yai dai 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 dai. Yai dai 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 dai. Right? All these things are really, really good. Let's write a song together. There you go. There's a silence. So here's the text. Or chadash al Tzion Ta'ir, v'nizke kulanu mihira le'oro. Any Hebrew speakers, translate please.
New light will
Shine on Zion.
shine.
V'nizke kulanu.
I mean, we go in there quickly. She's asking us for it.
Great, thank you. Between you and me, you speak English, I know. Okay, great. Now, I'm going to bring back some of our things here. Let's consider our audience. Who are we writing for? Let's choose.
For us right here.
For us right here, okay? And we are, who are we? Chazon. Pretty sophisticated crowd, right? That's going to be a stirred up composition, I have to tell you. What's our key? Actually, you know what? For educational purposes, you set me up. For educational purposes, I'm going to take this back, and our audience is not going to be Chazon. No, we're going to take an audience of, I would say, regular kahal, and they said, I would like to do, so this is Shatri, right? So let's just do this. We would like to sing with you, Chazan, during this part of Shatri. We would like for you to write something for us where we sing together, because I'm kind of getting tired of you, Chazan, going, oh, Hadash, you know, I don't want that. I want something participatory, right? What's our key? C. Okay.
What about making it Friedish and teaching them a little bit?
We're good. So, the key is C, right? Let's see. Sort of. That's a relative C, okay? Re range, so we're probably not going to go higher than a G, not too low. Rhythm, melody, nusach. Okay, anybody wants to, so let's say we want to have two parts to this song. We want to have the words, and then we want to have some kind of a nusach, some kind of a niggin as a part of it, okay? Oops. Okay.
It's going to be a major?
Range. And I was this one. Okay, alright. So this is the key. Okay, anybody wants to suggest a melody for Or Chadash at Zion Tayir? Anything? Do you do music? Yeah? Or Chadash at Zion Tayir. Okay, let's sing it together. Or Chadash at Zion Tayir. Hard time memorizing your melody. Can you simplify it for me? You just made it more difficult. So I suggest this. Or Chadash at Zion Tayir.
Oh, okay. Or Chadash at Zion Tayir.
And then A again.
Or Chadash at
Wait, are you going fifth up? So we have Or Chadash at Zion Tayir. Or Chadash at Zion Tayir.
Or Chadash at Zion Tayir.
That's good. That's the second version. I think we did Or Chadash at Zion Tayir twice. Now we need to keep going. Can you do it? So, Or Chadash at Zion Tayir. Or Chadash at Zion Tayir. So are you guys planning on repeating every phrase? You could. I'm just trying to get the shape of your composition. So the first part is pretty clear to me. Or Chadash at Zion Tayir. 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 Let's see if we can memorize it. Or Chadash at Zion Tayir. Or Chadash at Zion Tayir. Shofar Shabbat? Okay, good. So, I think we can write something like this. Yeah, How do you teach this? Anybody wants to come out and teach this? Who wants to teach this to us? And we kind of know. Who wants to teach? Asaf, you want to do it? Okay. Hazan is going to teach us in here too.
So I'm going to teach this.
Yep.
Okay. So let's start with the first verse. Or Chadash al Zion Ta'ir.
Or Chadash al Zion.
If I may just do one thing, you're doing everything great. Whatever you do with your hand, just use it to show them the pitch. Even though it seems simple to you. Or Chadash al Zion Ta'ir.
Okay, good. Okay. Or Chadash al Zion Ta'ir. No, repeat that.
We don't know that you want us to repeat. You don't want us to. So, this is not. It's we're. So if Asaf wants you to repeat, he's going to say, "We're going to learn the tune. When I do this means I'm singing. When I do this, it means you're singing." So he's going, "Or Chadash al Zion Ta'ir."
Or Chadash al Zion Ta'ir.
Or Chadash al Zion Ta'ir.
Or Chadash al Zion Ta'ir.
From the top. Or Chadash al Zion.
From the top, yours.
Or Chadash al Zion Ta'ir.
Or Chadash al Zion Ta'ir.
Very good. Now the next segment. Let's do it once more. Listen.
So you have those accidentals, right? You need to show them. Because what a regular Joe would do, I don't know, what is this here, right? And they would say, well, this is not aesthetically beautiful. And then you can do things like, it's as if you're a little bit in pain on top. You can do that.
Okay. So let's take the second part again. I'm going to show you and then, okay?
It says on your thing there that it's kulan. Is it kulan or fulan?
Let me check, okay? It's Chulano, but
It's with a flap without the daget.
yeah, it's Chulano. It's Chulano. But thanks for asking.
Sure.
Great question. Let's take it again. Okay? I'm going to give it to you once more. You know what? Let's take it again from the top, okay? You remember? Let's try to do it together.
Or Chadash al Zion Ta'ir.
Great.
Or Chadash al Zion Ta'ir.
Wonderful. Okay. Now the next segment. Listen.
So give them the previous one. Say, first it goes,
Good, okay? So we'll connect the two. Okay, and wonderful. Let's take it from the top. Okay.
clapping, just let us learn this first, and then you can clap. Okay?
You know what? I'm quitting the show. I'm not paying my dues.
Good. Finally, it's gone.
I was clapping and Kazan told me not to clap. This is terrible. Why did you hire this guy? So what I would do, I mean, you're right. You're absolutely right. What I would do, this is great. I love the way you clap. But let's do this. Let us learn the melody first, and then you'll be in charge of clapping. And if you put me in charge, I think like I'm a mom. I say, oh, I love this husband. Really great. Amazing.
You'll be in charge, but not on the clap, not on the clap.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. It's a tremendously difficult art because, you know, Asaf is a wonderful musician, great musician. And as a musician, he expects certain things to come from you. After all, you're a Cantors, right? Or pretend that you're not, but you are. Imagine you are not, right? And so what mistake that I made in my life many times working with children and adults is that because of all my conservatory degrees, right? I have masters in conducting, I have masters in musicology, and this great whatever boards, you know. But to teach somebody is a whole different art, right? We could be wonderful musicians. And so that's why it's super important to keep your eye on all these little things, because in the end, they make you successful. And in the end, and I'm coming to an end of this presentation too, correct?
There will be an end when you come to it, yeah.
Yeah, but is it 12:45?
No, it's 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock, perfect.
It's actually 12:47.
So this is something I didn't put in this presentation, but this, for those of you who are accomplished musicians, you know, this is how you pave the way for Amcha to then introduce more complicated things, right? Because then I always consider Cantor, again, I'm really sorry if I'm speaking from American perspective, but to me, the relationship between the Cantor and the congregation is a marriage. You know, like I'm married to my congregation is married to me. And so we argue, sometimes we get divorced, sometimes she's guilty, sometimes I'm guilty, sometimes we're suing each other, etc., etc., etc. But bottom line, the marriage works when let me ask you this question. When does the marriage work? When there is what?
Compromise.
Love, understanding, compromise, trust, right? All of this. So as a chazan, if you want to have that conversation, that relationship with your congregation, especially for those of you who are learned musicians, very, very hard, right? Because you can see, you find yourself looking at some guitar playing dude who all of a sudden has the attention of the congregation, and you, the great singer, the great musicologist, you don't. What happened, right? Well, guess what? They have certain skills that we need to pick up on.
How do you deal with the congregation know-all who doesn't actually know anything but thinks they know everything, and they want to show off?
Every congregation?
Yeah, here's the cousin. I'm better than the cousin. I can do this, that, and the other, which they can't, but they like to show off in front of their friends. But you shouldn't embarrass them necessarily.
Yes, you should
they
not
embarrass
embarrass
themselves. But
yeah,
you know.
Yeah, but let's say I'll tell you what I'm dealing with specifically. So when I come to shul on Saturday morning, somebody comes and says, "Did you see that video of Ozzy Schwartz that I sent you? Did you see Ozzy doing Adon Olam on the melody of Hamilton? That's what we should do." Right? And then you say, Ozzy and I are good friends, by the way. So you would say, do I need to do what Ozzy does? Or do I need to look at this request and find out why are they asking this question? Right? The reason they're asking this question, well, partly because they're watching YouTube videos sent to them by other people, but also in the States, for example, the musical language of American music theater is something that people relate to. This is going back to our, whom you're writing for, what is the essence of the kahal, right? When I interviewed for my current position in Neimuna, I I came from reform movement to conservative movement. And I was told by many of my conservative colleagues, they said, listen, the unfortunate thing is, the Nusach is no longer appreciated the way it was. They all like these congregational melodies. And I came to my audition at Bet Hillel Bnei Emunah, and I had Karlebach and Shake and I came down from the bima, and the first guy who came up to me and said, where is Chazonis? He says, where is it? Where is Stimme? You know, where? And I understood that I don't know anything about this congregation, right? And so, going back to what I said, remember who the congregation is, remember who you're writing music for, and again, we musicians are sometimes too arrogant to understand that we need to digest certain things for people and elevate them. It's sort of like the, you know, a common argument of do you perform Shakespeare in the original language, or do you do
The
it
original Klingon.
right, do you do it in vernacular, English, German, Russian, whatever, right? So, as far as I'm concerned, our job as Chazonim is to elevate the congregation, you know, and we can use many different tools to do it. We have about 10 minutes for questions.
Pavel, I have two questions. The first is to ask you who you think today are good composers that are composing music today. The second is whether you feel there is a difference in composing synagogue melodies for people who are sat in the room versus those people who are watching it online. And online, I don't just mean live streaming. You've already mentioned YouTube videos. We live in an age where the reach of the synagogue is far greater than it was ever, and particularly it's not confined just to that congregation. So do you feel there is a difference now in writing for people who are watching online versus those in the shul?
So I'll go first question first. So in my background as a musicologist, I learned something that I hope we all learn eventually, and that is I learned not to present my opinion by using words like or dislike, because we all like something and we all don't like something. The question is, and the reason this workshop is, what works and what doesn't, I think in this particular case. Do I like listening to Benny Meisner? I do. I love him, right? Do I love listening to Svetlana? I do. Can Svetlana or Benny work in my shul? I'm not sure. Maybe, for some things, I have no idea. Can I work at theirs? Maybe not. So as far as the art of composition goes, there were sort of, in my view, two ways of thought, musical thought. One is represented by people like Mary Finkelstein, where nusach is not important. And Meir said it himself. I'm not bashing him for that. Meir feels like, hey, I go for the beauty of the melody, I go for the medium of music theater sometimes, etc., etc., etc. And in many instances it works. Especially when it coincides with, when it checks out some of the points here that we talked about. Then there are people who really, really work with nusach. So one of these people is no longer alive. Todoros Greenberg is somebody that I think did amazing things. I do a lot of his stuff for High Holidays because even though he wrote in nusach, his stuff is very melodious and accessible. And until recently, Ben Steinberg in Canada, I think is a profound composer who really used nusach. I also want to mention Weizmann, what is his name? Not Lewandowski. The Singing Railway. Josh. What is his name?
I'll speak to you forget.
I'm getting old. It's a senior moment. He's on YouTube a lot. Josh Warshawski. There you go. Rabbi Josh Warshawski. So he's actually very interestingly combining the Hasidic feel, a little bit of a nusach, and also Israeli pop and folk music. So I think his stuff works for certain things. And then again, works for what? Am I in a shul of this size, or am I in Emmanuel at New York with organ and the symphony orchestra? Right? So it requires different skills, different approaches. As far as your second question, so YouTube has been, and pandemic I would say, in many different ways, widened our horizons. Like, I didn't know about Svetlana before, but I learned about her through pandemic, right? Because I didn't listen to her recordings, but I heard them during pandemic. And she's amazing. And so, in some ways, my comrades say to me, you know, I watched Kabbalat Shabbat in Australia, and it was really, really cool. Well, while you're watching Kabbalat Shabbat, why don't you come to Shabbat? So, the truth of the matter is that whatever you see on YouTube and whatever, again, goes into the category like and dislike. First of all, everything that's on YouTube is somewhat doctored, right? So if you have a good sound system and good streaming system, you get a great sound. You could be the most beautiful voice in the universe, but if your sound system sucks, you're screwed and nobody knows about you, right? How many chazonim you go into? In Chicago, we had a Cantors convention in 2014, and Chazan Steve Storer, God bless him, dug out a chazan who was 96 years old, who used to be a prima at Vienna Opera Theater. And I was sitting next to Mizrahi and all the biggest. He came out, he opened up the concert. We never heard of him. He was an accountant. He davened for a small shtibel in Chicago. My God, at 94, he had a high C. Mizrahi looked at me and said, let's go home. We're done. Because this guy was amazing. Have you ever heard of him? No. Right? He's not on YouTube. So so on one hand, it broadens our horizons. On the other hand, it doesn't really give us a true picture. So in the States, at least now, there's a movement towards not doing a lot of streaming and doing more things in person, because nothing substitutes for the energy of live interaction between the chazan and the chazan. Nothing in my opinion.
That's true.
Yeah. Say it again. You know what? When I left Russia to go to the United States, we had a very interesting dynamic in the family. My parents and my wife's parents were really worried. Are we going to go, to the United States? And we had a grandfather who passed away. His name was Daryl Revich, who went through the war and concentration camps. He looked at us and he said, what are you all worried about? Is there bread in America? We said, yes. Is there vodka in America? We said, yes. So go. Right? So you can make any kind of argument of not going to shul and not feeling well. But really, nowadays, unless, you bad bombed, and for that reason you have to come to shul. Because it's not a TV. It's not a TV. It's a community that matters. It's all about community.
To get them to go back after the lockdown.
That's a different lecture. That's a different lecture.
I think that live streaming services does us a tremendous disservice, because it's cut and dried. It becomes a performance. I do Zoom services, and it's participatory. And that way, sometimes I'll even say, unmute, we're going to make a holy cacophony together. And it works. It works because people are invested. If they just view it live streamed, what do they get out of it?
So you're making argument for Zoom. I actually strongly disagree. I hate Zoom.
Oh.
With all the fibers of my soul. The word mute makes me cute.
When
I'll be very honest, I hate Zoom.
Pavel, I came to Pavel, and I'd never heard of it until I switched on, I saw something, I connected with it, and I had to get in touch with him. Because it's true, isn't it? 100% true.
Yeah, for sure.
100% true. And because of that, hopefully, he's here now, teaching you and whatever it is. You find something, if you find a gem and you know what to do with it, it sparkles. If you find a gem, you put it in a drawer and you leave it, it doesn't sparkle.
Yeah.
But it's the same. There's two ways of looking at it as well. When you're a chassan and visiting a shul that you've never been to before, what you should do with the gabbai of the shul or the president, whoever it is, what tune do you do for Adon Olam, or what tune do you do for Kedusha, or what tune do you do for Lachadodi, or whatever it is you're doing. When you then sing the tune, the Kehillah automatically thinks, wow, he knows the tunes that we know. So therefore, you've got them on your side before you do. If it's a proiber and you're going for a job, that's one of the most important things I teach my students to do. When they go for something, find out. You can do later on, you get involved with a kahila, they have confidence in you, you have confidence in them. As Pavel said, it's like a marriage. You argue, you don't, you make up, you do this, etc., etc. But that's what it's all about.
I think Asaf had a question. Did you have a question?
I just wanted to, I think there was a commentary that it's difficult to get older people to the synagogue. I kind of experienced the contrary. I have most of the most constant seats in the synagogue are old people. Many of them, maybe it's more in Germany than elsewhere. That people who some of them don't have family in Hamburg or whatever, and they're the people who are older people.
So
not there to really sick.
I have the same experience. I also want to add before we end. Let's say if you're in Chicago, right, and you want to hear a good voice. Is the synagogue the first place you're going to go to?
No.
Probably not. You go to the lyric, right? If you want to hear a lecture on profound Judaic subjects, do you go to listen to my rabbi or any other rabbi? Probably not. You're going to go to Northwestern University and attend Bible and what makes a synagogue, and that reflects, it's kind of right, it reflects in everything that I said about teaching music and writing music. It's all about how. It's all about community. It's all about knowing each other, catering to each other, having a relationship with each other. And if that marriage works, then they come to listen to you because that's a different kind of a relationship, right? Right. Okay, guys, thank you so much.